Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Redeemr, and today I'll be teaching you how to mod Nekros. This is a new series I'll be starting on my channel where I plan to cover different Warframes and all the ways you can build them. So if you're interested in that, be sure to stick around and see what other Warframes I'll cover. I'm starting with Nekros because in my opinion, he's the most fun Warframe to build because his abilities allow for such unique synergies, and he tends to be useful in a lot of situations. Nekros is in a unique position because all four his abilities are good, and the augments for them are amazing as well. Most players tend to build Nekros around either his Desecrate, Terrify, or Shield of Shadows, or a combination of all three. I'll be covering all three builds in the video, but if you're interested in only specific builds, there will be timestamps on the screen and in the comments that you can skip ahead to. The first build I'm going to cover is the one that most players use, and that is the Desecrate build. Desecrate is Nekros' third ability that has a 54% chance to reroll enemy drop tables for additional loot. This ability is one of the most useful in game and should be used even when running a build not focused directly in Desecrate. Because of Desecrate's ability to produce health and energy orbs more often, Nekros is able to utilize mods such as Energy Conversion, Health Conversion, Equilibrium, Arcane Pulse, and Arcane Energize better than most Warframes in the game can. The first mod in my Desecrate build, and basically every other build that I have for Nekros, is Despoil, because it is Nekros' best augment, and arguably one of the best augments in the game. Despoil makes it so Nekros' Desecrate runs off of his health and not his energy. This is extremely useful because there's a lot of ways to regain health as Nekros and in the game in general, compared to regaining energy. The next mod I use in this build is another one of Nekros' augments. It's his Soul Survivor augment for his Soul Punch ability. This mod synergizes really well with Despoil, since it works by draining all of your energy to revive the down ally, and Despoil makes it so that you don't need to use energy for your main ability. This mod is by no means necessary for a Desecrate build, but I use it because you don't need that many mods for a functioning Desecrate build, and it's a useful utility to have, especially if you're playing in a team setting. I have Transient Fortitude on my build because although Power Strength and Power Duration doesn't affect Desecrate, the amount of Power Strength you have affects how much health allies are revived when hit with Soul Survivor. It is for this reason that I also don't use Overextended. The decreased power strength would make Soul Survivor almost useless, and I don't think the extra range is that necessary. With just the range mods I have right now, I have almost 50 meters of range. Adding Overextended would only take it to 70 meters, which isn't that big of an increase. Vitality serves a dual purpose on my build. First, it adds extra survivability when combined with health conversion, and it acts as my energy source for Desecrate. Although Desecrate consumes 10 health per enemy affected, I don't have to worry about my health dropping too low because I get heals from Nekros' passive, which gives me 5 health for every nearby enemy I kill. Plus I also get heals from Arcane Pulse and Equilibrium. A good way to get the most out of Desecrate is to use a weapon that does high slash damage, since it has a chance to dismember the enemy body, and enemy body parts count as individual targets to be desecrated. If you don't like this Desecrate build, you could always just go for max range and max efficiency and get very similar results or even better results in some cases. The next build I'll be covering is probably my favorite way to play Nekros, and it's just a lot of fun, and that is the Creep and Terrify build. Terrify is Nekros' second ability that causes affected enemies to run away from him and have a percentage of their armor reduced. The ability is very useful for getting enemies off of you or an objective, but outside of that it can feel very useless as the enemies often run away too fast for you to shoot them. The augment Creep and Terrify fixes this problem perfectly by slowing affected enemies by up to 80%. This ability is very similar to Molecular Prime, with the only difference being that the enemies are slowed greater by Terrify and they have their armor reduced instead of taking double damage. This is my Terrify build, and every mod here serves a unique purpose that I'll explain shortly. The three most important mods here are Despoil, Creep and Terrify, and Vitality. Creep and Terrify is the most important because without it, it wouldn't be a Terrify build. Despoil I feel is a necessity on every Nekros build, and Vitality because of the increased health and the ability to keep Desecrate going for longer. I use Transient Fortitude because Power Strength directly affects the amount of enemies affected and how much armor is reduced, and by what percent the enemies are slowed. You only need a power strength of 134 to reach the maximum enemy speed reduction, but I chose Transient Fortitude because I felt it was the best option for my build. You can however choose to go with something else, such as Energy Conversion or a different combination of power strength mods. Stretch and Cunning Drift are here because I feel range is the most important on a Creep and Terrify build. The range directly affects how far away enemies become slowed, and that is important because in Warframe the majority of enemies can attack you from very far away. The base range of the ability is only 15 meters, and with Stretch and Cunning Drift it increases to 24 meters, which should hit most enemies in your vicinity. I would advise against using Overextended because it would make the effects of Creep and Terrify almost useless. I use Prime Continuity mainly to counteract the effects of Transient Fortitude, and because duration affects how long enemies are slowed and have their armor reduced. Health Conversion is used mainly for the added survivability, and the amazing synergy it has with Desecrate. Your aura mod of choice doesn't matter too much, but I use Corrosive Projection because although when combined with Creep and Terrify it doesn't completely strip enemy armor, it makes it a lot easier to deal with. The last mod on my build is Equilibrium, which acts as my main source of energy and a secondary source of healing. The last build I'm going to cover is the Nekros Shield of Shadows build because it's the most complicated and it's the one that's most difficult to build around. Shadows of the Dead is Nekros' fourth ability, which revives enemies killed by Nekros back to fight for him. The ability was already good at keeping you alive, but with its Augment Shield of Shadows, it allows you to transfer a percentage of the damage you take onto your shadows, which makes Nekros incredibly tanky. The percentage of damage transfer maxes out at 90%, and to reach 90% you would need a Nekros with at least 214% power strength. There are a variety of ways to accomplish this, and each way comes with its own difficulties and drawbacks. The most common way is by using a max blind rage and a max power drift, which gives you exactly 214% power strength. The downsides of this are now Desecrate will consume 15 health per enemy, and it will cost 155 energy to cast Shadows of the Dead. Another way to achieve this is by using Transient Fortitude, Energy Conversion, and Power Drift. The downsides of this combo is that you have to use 3 mods instead of 2, and if you haven't picked up an Energy Orb in a while, you might not get the full benefits. You could also choose to run Umbral Intensify, Transient Fortitude, and Power Drift to get the desired power strength, but that could be very expensive to build. The next problem with this ability comes in the form of duration. The health drain of your shadows are affected by duration, and the beginning duration is 3%, which can be pretty fast. This becomes an even bigger problem when you realize that you are very limited on mod space. You need at least 3 mods to have maximum damage reduction, then you need Vitality and Dispoil for Desecrate to work properly, and then Health Conversion or Adaptation are really good because they can give you 98% or more damage reduction. Basically, when you account for all the necessary mods, you only have 1 or maybe 2 free mod spaces, and that has to go strictly into duration or else the shadows won't last as long. Rejuvenation is the perfect aura for this build, because if your duration is high enough, the effect of Rejuvenation would completely counteract the health decay of your shadows. You can also use Arcane Pulse, Vazarin's Protective Dash, or the Sancti Magistar to heal your shadows and make sure they last as long as possible. This is the build I currently use for my Shield of Shadows, and while it has a lot of shortcomings, it works for me. This build, however, I feel is the best balance of strength and duration, and is the most practical and useful build for Nekros' Shield of Shadows. All builds in Warframe have personal tastes, but I hope by showing you my builds and by explaining why I chose certain mods and their purposes, I could help you better build your own Nekros. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. I'll be continuing this series in the future. I hope to one day be able to cover all 41 Warframes, or whatever number it is at that time. The next Warframe I'll be covering is Nova, so if you're interested in that video, please subscribe and stick around. Thank you all for clicking on this video, and I hope you have a wonderful day.